We are taping this session, so if you have neighbors that couldn't attend, you can let them know it'll be on our YouTube channel, so they can learn a little bit about the budget as well. So our agenda this evening, I'm going to talk a little bit about the budget process, a general overview of township finances, some statistics, the reporting structure we follow at the township, and then I'll delve into the operating budget and finally the capital budget. So a little bit about the township and how our finances work. Our fiscal year is the same as the calendar year, so we have a December 31st year end. And the Municipal Act requires that municipal budgets must be balanced. We can't run a deficit like you might hear other levels of government. So our revenues have to equal expenditures. It doesn't mean we can't borrow and get debentures to build things, but you still have to balance your budget. And sure.
Is that
Yeah.
why when you look at the financial statements, you see transfers to reserves or is that the balancing?
Sometimes we use them to fund capital, like we'll use it to fund capital. We don't often use reserves to fund operating because that could be a little dangerous, but for capital, yes. We're required to give public notice for these budgets. And something to remember, when you look at our budget, it's basically cash-based. So it's not like a typical business where you would buy an asset, depreciate it, and you would see depreciation on the books. We don't work that way. When we buy something, it's an expense in the given year. It's a little different. But when we present our financial statements, we actually do real accrual accounting. So it is a little difficult to match it up, but all municipalities work that way. Maybe one day we'll budget for depreciation, but right now it's not legislated. So some important dates regarding the budget. Council saw their first look at it on Monday. This is the second presentation. Council approval will be on the 25th and if needed on the 26th. And then once budget is approved, every month council does get a report showing how the actuals are faring up against the budget. So there's constant monitoring to make sure that we're meeting the goals. So how do we start with this budget? In most aspects, it really is zero-based budgeting. We don't just take an expense and add 2%. We look at what happened during the year. Depending on what happens, for instance, let's say utility account, if we budgeted so much and it came in under, when we add a cost of living or an inflation factor, we add it to the actual, not just to the budget. So we do take a lot of time and effort to review all the numbers. And we do apply inflation.
So you basically do surveys. You start off with zero again.
We really do, and it takes a lot of time to do it that way, and that's sometimes why ours is a little bit delayed. And any changes in service level are presented separately to council, and they're not in the base budget. So you'll remember last year, one of the service level changes was we wanted to hire 2 truck drivers. So that was something that was separate from the base budget. Discussion took place, and that one was approved. In this year's budget, there's quite a few service level changes. There's a slide on that we'll talk about, but those aren't in the base budget. So I just want to talk a little bit about assessment growth, because it really is important when you're looking at a budget. So assessment growth is new assessment the township didn't have. It has nothing to do with reassessments that MPAC does. It is every time something new is built, there's an addition, anything like that. So for our township assessment growth, it's an extra $153,000. So that means the first $153,000 increase to the levy, there's no impact to the taxpayer. Another important thing to remember is for our township, a 1% tax levy increase is $64,000. When you look at other municipalities, if you look at Lincoln, 1% for them is $150,000. So always be careful, you know, when you hear, oh, 5%, 6%, 3%, you know, 5% sounds high maybe for our township, but really it's not a lot of money. So it's all relative. Yeah.
It's the same amount to the taxpayer. It's not to the town.
Right.
So 5% to the taxpayer is the same as in West Lincoln there is in
Yes.
Lincoln or Brisbane.
Yeah, I have a slide for that. I do. So what we always tell council too is if there is a 1% increase to the tax levy, it's about a $12 increase to your taxes. Or they can say every $10,000 equals about a $1.82 increase to property taxes. So I just want to show a quick video about assessment. And the reason I'm showing this is because sometimes there's confusion. You know, every 4 years when MPAC does their reassessments, and the last one, you know, farms are very much impacted. They went up a lot in assessment. That doesn't mean it's a cash cow for the township. The township's funds are based on the levy that we collect. The assessments are how it's divvied up between all the property owners. It doesn't mean the township's getting all this extra money though. So this slide is just going to, this video is going to show you that, and this is courtesy of the Niagara region. Councilors abstain.
Okay, I want to explain to you how your property taxes are calculated based on how much your home is worth. Imagine there's a town that only has 3 homes, and they're each worth a different amount. The total cost to provide all of their town's services is $1,000. This is collected through property taxes. Each homeowner pays property taxes based on how much their home is worth. So, the value of all the homes are added up and divided by the town's cost, which gives us the tax rate. This tax rate is applied to all the houses to get enough money to pay for all of the services. So, each homeowner pays according to how much their house is worth. Every 4 years, the houses are reassessed. Let's say all 3 properties have gone up equally in value. If we go back to our calculation, the total cost of services hasn't changed, but the total property value has increased. When this happens, there will be a decrease in the tax rate. Now, when we apply that new rate on all the homes, everyone still pays the same. Let's recap. Property taxes are based on what a home is worth. If reassessments all increase equally, then everyone pays the same taxes as before. Now, let's say another 4 years has gone by and these homes are reassessed. During this time, the house on the right became more valuable in the market than the other 2. Okay, so time for a little more math. The total value of all the homes have increased, which means the town has to calculate a new tax rate. With this new tax rate, the first 2 homes will actually pay less than the home on the right that was reassessed at a higher value. Since the cost of services hasn't changed, the town doesn't need to collect more property taxes. However, since property taxes are based on a home's value, those taxes could potentially go up or down based on the rest of the homes. So, what happens when the cost to provide services goes up? Well, it means more property taxes need to be collected from every home, and a new tax rate is calculated. To get the new rate, we take that amount that the town now needs and divide it by all the property values. The new rate is applied to all the homes, and now everyone has to pay the new tax amount to continue to fund all of the services. So, let's review. 1. Property taxes are based on the value of a home. When homes are reassessed equally, each homeowner will pay the same amount proportionately as before. 2. When homes are reassessed at different values, each homeowner will pay a different amount proportionately based on how much their home increased in value. 3. When the town's cost to provide services increases, a property tax increase, then everyone pays their share proportionately across the board. And that explains the relationship between property value and property taxes.
Now your estimates. So this slide, I don't know if everyone's aware of the way taxes work as well in terms of ratios and weighting. And this is very much legislated. There's these ratio thresholds that the province sets, and there's certain ones you can't go over, there's numbers you can't go over, and then at the regional level, working with the lower tier municipalities, ratios are set. And what they do is they move around the tax burden. So you always start with residential, which is a 1, and then there's weighting so that commercial, industrial, as you can see, they pay a little bit more, and then residential. And then it's legislated that farmland is 25% of the residential rate. Now, we do receive a grant from the province. It's the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, and it recognizes the fact that rural municipalities with a lot of farmland do not get the same amount of tax revenue as an urban municipality. So the grant helps to offset that loss in revenue. So in 2019, we're getting close to $1 million from the province for that. It's $954,800. In the past, the township got a lot more. Back in 2009, it was close to 1.2 million. The township uses those funds to help with the operating. So if something were to happen to that grant, if it gets lowered, it would have a big impact to the township.
Is that going to the township or township in the region?
No, that's strictly township, 100% township. Region would get OMPF funding, but for different things, different reasons, not this reason. Mm-hmm.
So some municipalities in the province have elected to reduce the tax rate on farmland because of the higher valuations that put on it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you made the comment that we're taxed at 25%, that's
Mm-hmm.
the max.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
any municipality can lower that.
Yes, you can't go over that.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about the budget, we always talk about an average tax impact, and we use an average home, and we look at a single-family detached home and what the value is. So for 2019, that assessed value is $363,877. So when we're calculating, the tax impact, we use that value by the tax rate, and that's how we figure out, when we say it's an average $56 tax increase, okay? We use that. And I think in West Lincoln, we probably have the third or fourth highest assessed values. So this chart I show every year, and I think you're all familiar with it because it's in your tax bill too. It just reminds everybody that the total taxes that the township collects, we only keep part of it. So in 2018, the total tax bill for an average homeowner was $3,894. We retained $1,191 of that. Education received $587, and the region received $2,116. Also, just some information about our township. There are certain departments that are funded through user fees. They're not funded from the tax base. So building, water, and wastewater are all funded through fees. And yeah,
Do the fees stay within the department?
absolutely.
The fees they collect stays there, they can't be spent for other.
Planning's different because planning, if they were to exceed their revenues, there's different things we could do. We could put the difference in the planning reserve, or we could use it to offset the whole township. The building department fees, though, they have to stay in the building department. That's what that one's legislated. So for those three, if there's any surpluses or deficits, they have to be funded within their own departments. And then when we look at equipment costs, they're allocated to all those departments that are shown on that slide. So you're not going to see a department called equipment costs. It's allocated. Okay, so the levy requirement for the new recreation center. Back in 2017, council approved tax requisitions to help pay for a new multi-use recreation center, the West Lincoln Community Center. At that time, the plan was to fund the project through various means. The Wind Turbine Community Fund is being used, development charges, donations, user fees, and an increase to taxes. So this was the original plan. It hasn't changed from that plan. So the increase in 2019 to the budget. Okay, part of the plan when it was designed was part of the increase was to cover some operating costs of the new facility. So within the base budget, there's just under $100,000 related to operating costs of the new facility. They're largely comprised of higher utility costs, cleaning costs, some higher insurance because the value of the building is more. So I think that that's the rec center. So it was going to be 555. So it's close to 555. This slide is hard to see. I apologize, but I wanted to give everybody a sense of the staff at the township and the different departments and the staff that work within it. So if you start on the left, we start with the, of course, the top is council, the CAO, and the confidential secretary. Then if we go to the left, we have the clerk's department, and then corporate services, building and planning, that transportation services, fire, and then the library. So if you go on our website, I think it's easier to read. You'll be able to see the actual FTEs under each department, but it gives you a sense. We're not huge, right? In the website, if you go to trending and you hit the budget button, this presentation's there now. Yeah, it's there. We put it on in the afternoon. So then it's easier on the device, right? You can like blow it up a bit. Okay, so Ross, this is my slide. I know about our taxes. So I just want to highlight that the taxes in West Lincoln are lower. I know I tell people that, no one believes me. But if you take, this is all based on 2018, of course, because 2019 isn't out yet. If you take that average assessed house of $345,000 and you look at the different tax rates in these municipalities, and that's the whole tax bill, right? Not just the West Lincoln portion. We are lower, so that speaks for itself, I think. And this tax rate here, it includes the urban service charge. So I have a slide about that, but if you live in the urban area of West Lincoln, you pay an additional cost for having sidewalks and streetlights. So that cost there includes it. So actually, if you live in the rural area, your taxes would be less than that. Okay? And I don't think the other municipalities have one of those kind of charges. Yeah.
So, in one respect, you look at that and say, great, West Lincoln's the cheapest in taxes.
Mm-hmm.
But can that be a double-edged sword? Because necessarily being the cheapest in taxes doesn't really mean we're in the best of shape. You know, I look at, Grimsby, Lincoln, Pelham, I don't really class them as so much as like West Lincoln, but then you look at Wainfleet, who is probably 95% rural.
Mm-hmm.
And, taxes substantially higher with not a lot of urban services. So,
Yeah. You know what, though, that Wainfleet number, I have to be honest, it seems, it's probably more difficult to find homes, perhaps assessed that high there, and that's perhaps why. I think the first four are more relevant. Wainfleet, I don't know. I don't want to, and I'm not doing this to say anything bad about our neighbors, it's just sort of to put in perspective that we're not, I hear people, we're so high, but. And if you live on Westbrook, apparently you want to live on the West Lincoln side of Westbrook, because we're less than Hamilton. That's what they tell me. Okay. Huh? Apparently. Yeah. Yeah, see? Okay. Okay, this one is comparing all taxes. So we do this every year, this financial information return. Every municipality in Ontario does one. So this data I'm getting is from the 2017 financial information returns, because 2018, most municipalities haven't finished those. So this is all taxes in. So that number's high because that includes something called PIL, which is payment in lieu taxes we receive. And we receive those from other government levels that they have exempt properties, but they still have to give us some money in lieu of not being taxable. And it also includes supplementary taxes. So those are the taxes we collect mid-year for new builds. So you can see if you take that number divided by households, again, West Lincoln is low. Now, every year, there's lots of talks about roads, right? Because it's very important in our municipality. So I've shown this slide, I think, in the past, and it just highlights the kilometer of roads West Lincoln has compared to the number of households. And I think we all know, we're not a very dense municipality. We're very wide. We're the biggest land mass one in Niagara. So, there's challenges with that because we have a lot of roads and not necessarily a lot of households to support those roads. And this is a similar slide. Instead of looking at roads, it looks at bridges and culverts. Okay. So this is just some general information about the township. If you look at our budget and you see certain headings and you don't know, what's included in these headings, this just helps you understand it. So when you see general government, it includes what you would think government is, but it also includes elections and clerks and treasury department. Protection services, that big heading, also includes the building as well, because that's considered like a protective service. And bylaw goes under there as well. Transportation services, which is probably our largest, covers anything you would think to do with transportation. Crossing guards is under here, which is interesting. Crossing guards are managed by the clerk's department, but when we report on it, we actually have to report on it under transportation services. Environmental services is water, wastewater, and storm. Health services is cemetery. And rec and culture, another big area. Yeah.
Just backing up to the water
Yeah.
department there. So you were saying about all the money collected in like for water, wastewater, that has to stay in those departments, so they're
Yeah.
self-supporting. So is there any accounting done within that as opposed to, so obviously wastewater, is going to be different from water distribution or water utility, but what about the bulk water? Like, is the bulk water that's going to the rural people in the township subsidizing the residential, like the urban area?
So when we consider water, we include water utility network and bulk water as one. They're all considered water. So when we calculate the water fees, what we do is we look at all the capital that has to be done. And then we factor in, okay, what's the cost of all this capital and operating? The difference is the bulk water fees, they don't pay anything. Nothing goes in for wastewater for them. So it's more of just the water fee. So when we calculate what goes into the reserve, we just treat it all as one. It's one big, so I can't tell you if one's subsidizing the other. We have a reserve. And yeah.
Because I used to be involved in that business for years, and there's very little infrastructure to that station, because all the infrastructure really is the bulk water haulers. They're the ones delivering. They're the pipeline. They're the water main type thing. So I look at it as, the amount of infrastructure there to operate that bulk filling station compared to the amount of money that's being charged for water. Sometimes I have a hard time getting my head around that.
Yeah, but I mean, the bulk water fee is much lower than the consumption fee a house gets charged. They don't, yeah, I don't have it in front of me, all the fees for bulk, but it's less. For most people, when they get water delivered to their home, it's not the water that's costing them, it's the delivery charge. It's very high, right? Okay, so recreation and culture, when you look at high-end reporting, that actually includes the library as well. It gets reported under that heading. And then we have planning, and that's it. So now we're going to get into the actual 2019 budget. So the budget is approximately $15 million of expenditures. And this chart tells you how it's being spent by department or function area. And more than half is going to environmental services, which is water, wastewater, and storm, and transportation services.
So that pays itself.
The first part, yeah, the 31%. Yeah. I do this because in the past, we used to just show water, wastewater is zero, and we'd say, oh, our budget's like 8 million or something. But it's not realistic because we spend 15 million, and I think people need to remember that that's a really important department, and it is self-funding, but like, no, but staff spends a lot of time in it, and yeah. And so we spend 15 million. We don't just spend 8 million. And this one shows you I didn't skip under that. No. Okay. Yeah, I did skip one. Okay, this one tells us how we're spending the budget in sort of like the kind of expense it is. So our highest area is salary and benefits, which makes up 39% of the budget. And next highest is contracted services at 20% of the budget. And contracted services covers a big realm of things. It covers under transportation services, if they have a ditching contract, if they have spot repair on the roads. It covers environmental services, the water we buy from the region, anything we contract out. So, auditing, legal. So that's a big chunk as well. And 12% is contribution to reserves. This one shows you our revenue streams. So the largest one is property taxes at 47%. User fees, the bulk of which is water and wastewater, which makes up 32% of our revenue. Government transfers, that is basically made up of that OMPF funding that I was speaking of. And just another note about that OMPF funding, the province is looking at it in 2019, and there's probably going to be changes to it in 2020. They're supposed to tell us early enough so that we can plan for it. So, yes.
I'm just wondering in general, when it comes to budgets and departments and so on, do you practice any zero-based budgeting at all in your
Yeah. So basically, we do start from scratch. That's why it takes so long. I'm going to be honest. We go through every account, look what happened in the past year. Sometimes the accounts have to go up based on what's been happening, and sometimes they go down if we didn't spend it or if utilities aren't as high as we thought they would be. There's some accounts you don't cut though. Like, let's say you budget so much for legal fees. Well, you're not going to always be changing that one because then it makes the budget too erratic, because one year you might have more challenges and you need to spend more on legal, some years you don't. So some you try to keep steady because you don't want a lot of weird movements in the budget. And I'm talking they're small budgets. Like, I think legal is, I think it's 40,000. So, but we do practice it as best as we can. Yeah.
So, in other words, if you have a department that doesn't spend the budget, what do you do? You reduce that budget the following year?
Okay. So if when we finish our year end, if there's money left over, it's considered a surplus. So then a report goes to council where we recommend, okay, what are we going to do with the surplus? Part of it usually goes into the next year's budget to help offset a tax increase, and part of it will go into reserves. Depending on where the savings is, the township has a reserve policy, and in that reserve policy, it'll say, for instance, the library, if there's savings in the library, it goes back into the library reserve. If there's equipment, if there's savings in that area, it goes back into their reserve. Again, if it's over, we use that reserve to help fund it as well. Yeah.
Balances in your reserves or just
We try to follow the policy as best as we can. Each reserve is treated differently, but the goal is in most of those reserves, we try to make sure there's enough money to fund the future capital. Okay? And I'm going to be honest, some of them are better than others. Equipment and fire are much more rigid because the township's been putting money into those forever. For roads, we don't really have a road reserve. We use general capital. I think this year we're putting 177,000 into it. It's not enough, I'm going to be honest. It's not. The bridge reserve, we're putting 130,000 into it. I think we only started putting money into that reserve last year. So we're trying to build them up. Some reserves, though, are designed that they will go to zero, because if they're being saved up just to do a certain project, that project's done, it goes to zero, and then you build it up again for something else. We have one reserve, it's the contingency reserve, and that one, it has to have a minimum balance. I can't remember what it is, percentage, but it's related to the levy. So we want to have so much in there, I think it's 1% of the levy, and that's for emergencies, right, if something were to happen. So we do our best, yeah. Yeah, but if you want that reserve,
I'm obsessed with reserves. So
no, that's good.
every year I ask you the same question.
No, that's important.
Funding from,
It's our bank account, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Funding from reserves, the treatment, what is that?
Okay, so this is, we would have used reserves to fund some things. Okay, I gotta think what it is. Oh, I know what that is. So, no. So you gotta remember, in the operating fund is the debt payment for the rec center, okay? And part of the payment of that is some user fees. So, and the user fees come from a reserve. So there's a little bit of that going towards there. And I'm trying to think what else that is. Oh, I know what else that is. So the building department, we're using the building reserve to help finance the building department this year. I think it's about 130,000.
So this pie chart is just basically 2019.
And this is operating. Yeah, this is just operating. There's another one for capital. Yeah, because the idea is you shouldn't be using reserves for operating. This chart here is a summary of the 2019 budget, and council received this, and they also received the same looking kind of report by department. And that's all in the budget report that was presented on Monday, and that's on our website if you want to look at more details. Okay, but this is highly summarized. And at the top, you can see the tax levy, and then we showed the levy for the street lights, levy for the sidewalk. The supplemental, that's an estimate. We try to estimate, okay, how many new builds are we going to have during the year? That's usually a conservative number, because you don't want to budget too high, because if those builds don't happen, you know, I don't want to be in a loss position.
Was there something different that happened with benefits this year, going up 13%?
Yeah, okay. So for that one there, part of it is when staff change from single to family, there's a cost to the township. Like group benefits. Yeah, there's a cost to that. As salaries go up, benefits go up as well.
No, I just.
Yeah,
There's
no.
quite a difference between the salary line and the benefit line.
Yeah.
So it sounded like there was
Another,
different
yeah.
that happened.
Yeah, because the numbers are small, I think the change from family, it's in my report, family to single. I'll tell you what that is. It's more than you would think it is.
It's okay, no,
No, I know I said it in here. Right here. So it's $4,500 per person, like, so if you change. And so what we're trying to do is, like, you have to build it up slowly in your budget because, again, you know, when staff change and all of a sudden you had, you know, you budgeted for single and then people come on that are family, it hits the budget. So it's better to have it in your base, and that way you're not hit every year. So we're trying to just build that up to get a better base for us. And OMER's, you know, the pension plan goes up as salaries go up as well.
What is it, on contribution?
It's defined benefit. Yeah,
Well, it's been-
yeah. Yeah, yeah, so the employee pays and the township pays for that one.
So that could get expensive based on interest
Well, the rates have been pretty steady, but there's other factors, though the contribution rate may be the same, but then the amount you contribute goes up. Yeah, it's like 9%. Yeah, and then debenture interest, obviously, we didn't have as much of a debenture payment in 2018 as we have in 2019. So if you look at these and you have any questions, you can just email us or call us, okay? Yeah,
Just a quick one. I would
yeah,
have, just looking at the variance there.
which one?
For
Percentage?
salary and wages and benefits line is
Yeah,
200, almost $300,000.
yeah, yeah,
Now, if you look at our tax levy, which
Yeah.
is $300,000, that's pretty low. Would like that, would get if that was the only expense.
mm-hmm,
So I guess so that, but that goes up every year. It's not like any other expense where this is high this year, it goes, you lower it. It's employees, you just turn the employees up and down. So how do you deal with that? Where do you get the revenue from?
well, growth helps, right? So when we have,
Growth, yeah.
like assessment growth helps.
Growth is only $158,000.
Yeah, yeah,
$300,000 hit there.
yeah.
So it's gotta
It's a challenge, yeah. We try to reduce costs in other areas, but I'm going to be honest, most of our budget is salaries and wages, and,
That's what I mean.
yeah,
It's a big number.
yeah. And like, you got to think in 2018, like, we hired 2 truck drivers, but the full cost wasn't in 2018, right? Part of it's in 2019. And it's a lot. When you consider 64,000 is 1%, you can take it from there, what, like if you hire someone, what that cost is in terms of a percentage. It's not easy.
No, that's what I mean. So
Yeah.
Basically, what that is doing is just taking a lot of the expense away from other areas. Is the way I don't want to pick on employees. That's just stuff.
Oh, no.
I'm just saying,
No.
that is,
So you can see special projects, that line, how much it went down. Like down below, like did it go down? So that's how we do it. We do less,
but I'm just,
yeah.
I'm concerned on the longer term.
Mm-hmm.
Because that number's not going to go down. Like, I think I read in the report, the salaries went up 2%.
Yeah,
There's a reason.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So every year it's going to go up.
Yeah. Well, you have to remember some of it. Some of those salaries and wages are within the building department, right? So that's fee-based.
Also,
Some of them are in,
offset.
yeah, some of them are in water, so you have to increase the water rates, right? So you deal with it that way. There's assessment growth. And hopefully, you know, there's other fees we can charge to help with it. But it's not easy, no. Yeah, there's no secret formula to that. That I think for municipalities, that is their probably largest area, and utilities is hard because you have no control over that one, really. You can control a little bit of the other things, but yeah. Yes,
You have my sympathy.
it's okay. Yes, Counselor?
Yes,
Yeah.
salaries are everybody's most biggest expense, doesn't matter what business you're in, right? Salary is usually the biggest expense.
Yeah, yes.
But you hope your revenue is high enough to deal with it. And I think with the tax levy, I think, well, when I look at some of the numbers going through, I get a sense that people forget that we're in a very low tax base here.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you might get 4% tax, but it's not a lot of money coming back, so,
No,
so you
Yeah.
decide to spend $100,000, that's a
Yeah.
significant hit for West Lincoln, maybe not for Grimsby,
mm-hmm,
just for West Lincoln.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you deal with unpaid taxes, and where's that?
Okay, so you're not gonna, where you would see the result of unpaid taxes is in penalty. There's a penalty that we charge. So that's under other revenue. It's,
I'm talking about uncollected tax.
okay, so uncollected, it's not in the budget, it would be on our financial statement. So if you were to look at our financial statements, you would see something called taxes receivable. And that would be basically,
Do you have any idea what the percentage is in this township?
I don't have it off the top of my
What's your guess?
head. I'm sorry. No.
I would have thought you would have known that.
When I'm working on this, I can't think about, yeah, yeah.
Whether it's high or low, and whether, how does it compare with other municipalities?
Yeah,
I think that's an important number to know.
yeah. I don't have it off the top of my head. Yeah, it's in our statements.
What is the money go revenue?
It's going to pay off the rec center.
And operating is
It's under other revenue because it's considered a donation. Yeah. That's where that one is. Yes.
So in the operating expenses, the repairs and maintenance, materials only, so that's up 16.2%. I would imagine that the gravel that goes on gravel roads, which I recall is it comes out of operating, it'd be nice to think there was a 16.2% rate increase in gravel, but I doubt that's happening. So what all is included in that repairs and maintenance then?
That includes all the material they use during winter control season. So it includes the salt and the sand. That's also where we put, wastewater goes under contracted services, but the water that we get from the region, we put it under there as well, materials. So yeah, it's not all gravel, I'm sorry. Okay. All right, so this is what the tax levy looks like right now. It's increased $460,670, which is a 7.18% increase in the tax levy. Then we have assessment growth, which helps to bring down the impact on taxes. So that's where we get the net levy requirement ends up being 4.8%. When we factor that into actual taxes paid, we're at a 4.68% tax increase, which is a $56 increase to the township portion of taxes. Okay, this is just the rural area. It does not include the urban service area charge.
I got a comment.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I don't care. It's okay.
7.1% tax increase of levies. It's not bad. 4% increase, you got growth.
Mm-hmm.
Inflation's running below 2%, so from that percentage, it's probably not a bad number.
The 7.18? Well, you got to consider the rec center is the biggest, is like the big chunk of that,
Well,
right?
I understand that.
Yeah.
But my point is the revenue is a decent return, but the expenses still don't lie. I don't. A 10% return on your tax levy on an annual basis,
Mm-hmm.
other unless you get 5% growth.
Mm-hmm. But, so you're saying the 460 is high? You're saying the 460,000 is high, right? Is that what you're saying?
From
Yeah.
revenue.
Yeah, so,
On a percentage basis of the tax,
mm-hmm,
7%. So if you increase your taxes every year at 7%,
mm-hmm,
I think you would be happy.
mm-hmm. The residents wouldn't be happy. The residents wouldn't be happy.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So it is a high number. Like, so you're getting 7%. Like my investment, you're getting 7%, but thrilled.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, but,
you get 4% increase in for the property owners. The rest is growth. Inflation's only running at 2%. So you're up 5%.
yeah. But you have to remember, of that 460, 670, 307,000 of it is for the rec center.
Well, I understand.
Yeah.
Just because,
So in most years, we wouldn't have that, right?
I understand.
Yeah.
But just because council decides to put all their eggs in one basket,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the taxpayer's responsibility to say, well, gee, we need extra revenue for other items. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Got it. I understand. Yes.
So
No, that's new assessment. So what happens is, you know,
That's total new assessment.
well, that's the revenue from the new assessment. The new assessment's millions, right? So that's like the tax revenue from it. So when we figure out our budget, we're basing it on the assessment roll we received from MPAC. We get it at the end of December. Then all through the year, there's new builds, things happen, right? So then late in 2019, we get these things called supplemental rolls, supplemental taxes, where it's the growth that happened. So you get it in the year it happens, and then you get it the next year as well. So that's what that is representing. It means basically because there's new people, new properties paying into the pot, everyone else can pay less. That's the easiest way to put it.
So what happens to the development charge?
Yeah, so development charges, it's very, it's ruled by the Development Charge Act. It's very specific. So what you do is you have a background study you do every 5 years where you list all the projects related to development, to growth. Then a charge is figured out. That charge developers pay. And then we use that revenue to fund those projects that were in the development charge background study. So it funds capital.
Not all this revenue stays in the township?
It funds capital. The development charges that we collect fund capital related to growth. So let's say,
Roads and sidewalks?
yep, yep,
Sewers and...
yep. Parks, it's the rec center, it's funding part of the rec center, thank you.
Is that,
Yeah.
have we totally utilized the development charges for the rec center? Is that?
Yeah, the new background study's coming in April, and it's fully recognized in that new development charge background study, because the old study didn't have the rec center in it. It had an arena replacement, but it wasn't the same. So this new one will have different rates. I don't really want to say what they are, but yeah. Yeah, so development charges can't be used for operating or anything like that. It's used for capital. But the capital has to be in the background study, or else you can't use it for anything you want. Okay?
Donna, if we, go get back to the 7.18.
Yeah.
If we averaged out the last 4 or 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
with the property tax increases and growth, would it be around that 7%?
Yeah, I do have a chart. I don't have it here, but there is something. It's about 6,
6?
7, and then like assessment growth helps us, right? Last year it was higher, but yeah, it is. It's been pretty high in the past few years, and don't blame it on me. Yes.
And then going back several years ago, there was a very small change in taxes
Mm-hmm.
due to the fact that council today decided we want to look good and not spend any more money and anybody with tax, anybody with higher taxes, but I believe not painful.
Yeah. If you go back, what was happening is the levy increase would be like 0 or 1, but because of growth, people's taxes were going down. It's true. They were actually going down. Yeah.
People have short memories, though, they don't remember.
No. And then reassessment comes along, like it changes. It's hard, right? It changes. You're not going to remember.
Well, I've been here 8 years, and I don't remember it going down.
It was before your time. You still pay less than Hamilton.
As just mentioned, the only time I went down considerably was before the election. That's
Okay. So we're almost done. So I just want to talk about the urban area of Smithville and the urban service charge that they pay. So the levy for this area is going up, and it's mainly due to sidewalk work. And it's not the building of the new sidewalks, it's the maintenance of the sidewalks and the standards that have to be met. For a municipality, one of the biggest liabilities is these trip and falls, and you really have to make sure that sidewalks are properly leveled, because if there is a trip and fall, the way things are, the township usually has some liability for it. So more money is being put into that area of the budget. So For 2019, people in the urban area of Smithville will pay an additional $88.74. So compared to that other slide I showed you, it's an additional $88.74, and that represents a $9.13 increase over 2018. So I'm just going to go over quickly some of the factors that are impacting the budget. The first is the $307,000 allocation to pay for the community center. The truck drivers, as I mentioned, they were hired in 2018. The full cost wasn't budgeted in 2018, so this is the other half of the cost in 2019. Counselors, they used to have a 1/3 tax-free allowance. That's gone now legislatively. This is the township cost. So what happens is because, no, this is not the gross up. So what this is because counselors, it's all taxable now, that means a lot of the costs related to earnings go up. Employers' health tax, CPP, and OMERS, they go up and they cost the township. Some staffing changes. We had a position go from contract to full-time. This is the impact. We save money, Ross, crossing guards, $8,100. So we do reduce budgets. Compensation, as we know, has gone up. Fuel costs, we had to budget more because, and that's mainly usage, not even the price. It's just going up. That's benefits and salaries. Well, you got to think part of it's under truck drivers.
Oh, I see. So
Yeah.
it's spread out.
Yeah, so that's the 2%. We have, a few years ago, when we did Bridge 12, part of the financing was a debenture. We budgeted for some of it in 2018, and this is the balance in 2019. Storm sewer assessments, something new that we've added to the operating fund. Railway crossing improvements and pedestrian crossings. The pedestrian crossing is Highway 20, on Highway 20. We lost some funding under recreation. We lost some grants. It was for seniors and movie night. Here we're decreasing the operating budget. So what program support is we look at corporate services because it's big support to all the other departments. And we allocate to some of the fee-based departments. And then we're funding less capital from operations this year to help bring the levy down.
So that line there, decrease in recreational program.
Yeah.
So that, is that an immediate assumption that because we're not getting the grant money, we're just gonna keep up with the program and pay it out of our pocket?
Yeah.
As opposed to canceling the program?
Council can change that, but we've budgeted that we're still doing movie night and we're still doing seniors programming. Yeah, and that's a cost of the budget. Council can, well, it's hard to change compensation because you'd have to get rid of people, but and then some of these things you can't change. Fuel is fuel. Like, it snows and you got to clean the roads, right? Okay, so water and wastewater. Back in 2016, we did a big study about water and wastewater, and the consultant at that time recommended a 5% increase to user fees. So we're continuing with that plan. So it's a 5% increase effective July 1st, 2019. Total operating budget for the two departments is $3.5 million, and it includes a transfer from two reserves of just about $500,000. One more year, and then we'll do another study, and we'll see. We have to. Yes.
So that transfer that you're putting into reserves, that's, those reserves you tap into if you've got to replace a water main or reline a sewer or something like that.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that never impacts,
Development charges help as well, because a lot of that work we do when we upsize a main.
the upsize, yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah, we can use development charges. So this is what the quarterly water bill will look like for an average user. It'll go from $250 a quarter to $263 a quarter. So these are the service level change requests that staff have compiled. These are the items that are not in the base budget. They're items that will improve service levels that the township is currently providing. And these are a council decision. So I will go through them quickly. The first one is a receptionist for the new recreation center to help with administrative duties of the staff, the facility manager and the rec coordinator, and also just to deal with the new facility and the bookings. We have new services there. We have rooms that we never had before that can be booked. We have a gymnasium before that we never had booked. It's all new. So there's a request for a staff position for that. We have a recreational part-time programmer. There's a request to make that position full-time. There's a request for an additional parks facilities staff person. So they're the ones that work in the arena, and they also cut grass in the summer. The library has a request to increase part-time hours to deal with the increased services that they are providing. There's a request for the library to be open on Sundays for the months of September to March, and that's just because the facility is so busy during arena time when the ice is open. A lot of families are going there, and they're wanting to use the library as well, and it's closed. So there's a request to have it open. There's a request for a part-time information technology staff person, and that's for the whole township. Technology keeps growing, and we only have one staff person that deals with it all. Gypsy moth, it's a spraying program. So that is the cost to spray township property and also to coordinate the program. The actual spraying on people's properties would be paid by the property owner. And the last one is to start up a fund to help fund any brownfield applications we may get. Because council a few years ago passed a CIP, which is a community improvement plan for brownfield. So brownfield would be, tell me if I'm wrong, Brian, like College Street, you know, it's empty. If someone were to do something with it, it's considered a brownfield, right? It's not a greenfield. So.
Has the old St. Martin's School been dropped as far as town being involved in purchasing?
The CAO can answer that one.
So what the township did was we made an application to the province for funding that would assist the school board with keeping that property, all the costs associated with keeping the property intact. We still have not heard yet, but we are the director of planning and building and I are in sort of regular contact with the school board and the province to keep that going. The idea is not necessarily for us to purchase the building, but we really would like to have a better idea of what to do with the property because we own the property beside it as well. So in the budget for this year is a secondary plan exercise to look at defining what our planning needs are and how that land should be appropriately zoned to meet the community needs. And then
Okay,
the,
so that whole financial, there's no financial impact.
correct.
Now, it's also my understanding that the current St. Martin's School that's running out of room.
I don't know.
Pardon me?
The current St. Martin's School is running out of room.
I've heard that too.
I know.
That's, I think because they have to, when they do their allocations, their size allocations, they're doing it at the current time. I don't know what their formula is for looking at future growth.
Yes, sir.
So actually, this is kind of a two-part question to deal with some of these extra increases in employees.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing concerning the library, it had been in the past, and maybe things have changed over the years. There used to be a large contingent of volunteer people who used to work at the library. Is there any still? And if there is, what percentage of volunteers do you have?
Vanessa can answer that. Yeah.
Hi there. So currently, we have over 50 volunteers at the library that do everything from put on programs, they come in, host workshops for the public. We have a library board that's made up of volunteers and a Friends of the Library group that does fundraising for us. So we are thoroughly taking advantage of the people who are willing to be volunteers at the library.
And so then the same thing, has Recreation Department, which I guess some of are called Public Works, which is probably unfair to the Public Works Director who just started, but has there been any discussion or entertainment of any thoughts of having, asking for, you know, people to volunteer their time to help work, you know, this reception area at the arena, is like front desk type thing, people agree to arrange for booking, facilities or something? Has there been any?
Can I say, I'll answer. Oh, part of it. Well, I can answer part of it, and then Bev can. You have to be careful with one thing. We're a unionized environment. So you cannot work that would be done by a unionized employee. If you got into a system where volunteers were doing it, we would run into some trouble. So that's my take on it.
And I will add to that, that we're going to, you know, given the fact that we've had discussion about this at the council table, we'll look at ways that perhaps we can involve volunteers in the future, but there's also a lot of work associated with coordinating a volunteer program. And so I think the bottom line is right now we have a new area that if we're going to keep it open, we need to be able to actually provide a staff member to be there to be able to take those bookings and to help people find their way to their rooms and find the new equipment and then as well as do some of those administrative things that are covered by the groups that have been working hard at these things and are actually just finding it that the workload is actually too much. So we're at a sort of a crunch point, and actually I'll leave my comments there. But we will look at ways to perhaps have a volunteer come in while there's another staff person there to augment and then give people experience. But as Donna says, on the other side we have a unionized environment, and we have to respect that labor management relationship.
And just, you know, this position, I'm not even in that department, but I can see, you know, a little thing like cemetery. We used to have somebody running our cemeteries. It was part-time. And it's been collapsed into somebody else's job. And there's a lot of administrative work that goes with that cemetery stuff. This is an example of something this position could do. So it's not all related to being, you know, a greeter at the rec center. There's a lot of new demands on staff. A lot of new regulations come on. There's this whole energy management tracking stuff. There's playgrounds have to be inspected, right? Trails have to be inspected. So there's all this data that needs to be tracked. And part of the goal is just to have some admin staff to assist with some of that work. Yeah.
So this receptionist administrative position, whatever, is it expected that somebody has to be manning that position anytime the doors are open in that building?
I can't answer that one.
I think there's sort of 2 points. Look, there's in the other facility, we had a process whereby it was a smaller facility. So if we had a staff member in the evening, we had to have a contingency plan in place in case an issue came up, and that was usually done, unfortunately, through cell phone and having somebody come in. And I think given the size of this new facility, and when you look at health and safety, we can't have that anymore. So I think it'll be made up of a combination of that receptionist, because they aren't going to be working 17 hours a day. It'll be we're going to be looking at the hours to get sort of the optimum number of hours, because we want to make sure that we have the right coverage, but that will be augmented by some of the arena staff that can assist in the evenings. So we're really just trying to work our way through this right now. There wasn't really an operational plan that was developed, and we're working really hard right now to bring that together. And we take every bit of feedback we can get on it as we move forward.
I think, as was stated here Monday night, there's a lot of things that are coming up now that, although we suspected them, we didn't know what the numbers were or totally what they were going to be 2 years ago, and whether that was right or wrong, we won't go down that road today. But what my fear is that if you obviously have to have somebody in the building with some authority, whether it's people on the walking track, in the library, whatever, that's a lot of hours over 7 days a week. And I would hope that this doesn't translate into a lot of time and a half of double time for somebody.
Thank you for that feedback. And we're pretty conscious of that, so that's why the job description would be written with laying out the specific hours, so we're giving consideration to that right now. And I had something else to say about this, so give me 1 second. What was the first part of your comment? Oh, here's the other side, is we've even noticed in the last couple of weeks, now that the facility is open, our staff are fielding a number of calls for rentals. And we have done the process of setting the rates that we sort of used a midline of the region as our benchmark for that. And I think that we will see a good amount of revenue coming in to support those activities as well. So we're going to really be watching that ratio over the next year.
I'll continue the discussion.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
In the 99,400, there was half a body allocated for, so that, I don't know if that is what that was for, but that was somebody's assumption, I guess, that we put in half a body. We obviously are going to be more than half a body. And I guess where I've come from that, first of all, to be perfectly honest with you, when I saw that request, my first response was, you gotta be kidding.
Mm-hmm.
The paint is not even wet on this building, and we need more staff. And it's not one body, we're looking at, well, it's $135,000 in 2019 because of the timing, but on an annual budget, we're looking at $205,000.
That's not all related to the rec center, though. Like right,
No,
most of it, but not all of
It
it.
was 128.
Yeah, not all of it.
So if I piggyback that extra cost onto the salaries and wages that we were talking about earlier, we're talking big numbers at this point. And I don't know how we pay for it. As a taxpayer, I was concerned about it.
Done.
That's why you're here.
Do we have the chart that talks about the details of the 99,000 here?
I don't think I have it in a slide, but I can tell you what they are. The 99,000? You're referring to there was,
Well, they're in the 99,000.
yeah,
There was a
there's
half body.
15,000. There's 15,000 for part-time staffing.
Yeah.
And then there's 11,700 for cleaning. That's what you're referring to, Ross, I think. It's on page 6 of the report, page 5 or 6, depending on how you read it. And so what that staffing increase is, the 15,000, that's part-time staff that is necessary just to keep the same service we had. So we had an arena, now we have this bigger arena, and there was a need for some more part-time staff. So sort of like the
So
nine,
What we're saying
yeah.
is, how long has the building been open? The library's been open since October. So since October, we realized that we need 3 or 4 more people.
I don't know if it's, you're listing it as 3 or 4 people.
Well, there's a receptionist.
A lot of
there's
it part-time,
little
yeah.
full-time, there's additional full-time equivalent. There's somebody, the library would increase the part-time hours.
And, well, I think Vanessa will speak to that, but
Well, I'm
there's,
not talking about the bonds, I'm just worried about the actual value of the people that you have to pay. Yeah, and quite frankly, the building's been open for 3 or 4 months.
So you know what, Ross, but I mean, Yeah, it's what's been
What
happening,
I'm concerned
yeah.
about is
Your
we're
taxes.
running up all these costs, and next year we don't have to pay for MERS anymore.
Mhm.
So everyone's, well, let's have a tax increase of 6%. Why? Well, because we've got all these extra costs.
Mhm.
That's what I'm concerned with.
No, that's why you're here. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't bring the sheet with me, but in that $90-some-odd
Mhm.
thousand, do I recall there was a line item for parking lot maintenance, like snow removal?
Yeah, 12,000. It's right here,
So
12,000.
my question is, we already have a parking lot there now, that we're already doing snow removal on now.
Mhm.
Why is it gonna cost us $12,000 more
Mm-hmm.
for snow removal? Because the parking lot that's there, the majority was coming out, right?
So we do have a new director that was hired after this was done. So that is something we're going to be reviewing. Yeah.
Yeah, we are reviewing that. We may not, we'll see if we can continue doing it with our own services.
Oh, okay, so that's,
Mhm.
That was like contracted services. Before,
Yeah.
When the budget was put together, I think they allocated contracted services to do the parking lot.
Yeah.
But we're looking at doing it ourselves.
because that 90-some-odd thousand was increased cost to maintain what we had. And so I look at it saying,
Yep.
if we're already plowing a parking lot that holds 150 vehicles, how do we end up with that much more money to do the same job?
Yeah.
That's all I'm
Yeah.
looking at.
So, I mean, we did our first presentation Monday. I think we have a sense of what council would like to see. So, we are re-reviewing these numbers. So, yeah. So I'm going to have more gray hair. Yes, Counselor.
Even as a taxpayer myself, I understand the concern that I guess not knowing what the costs are going to be in the future, but looking at the building being brand new and kind of just barely on its feet, I'm also fearful that if we don't equip it properly, like, how are we going to expect it to be successful to generate enough revenue to pay for itself and improve the operations side of things? So again, not to necessarily say, trying to statement, but I think we also got to be mindful, like, this, as everyone understands, this just opened, it's barely staffed, and it's just gonna, a lot of what the potential is gonna be once we get past year one, and we kind of, look at things at that point, and, myself, I think we understand how well our township works, everybody, has about 15 hats on to begin with. I don't think, at least myself as a taxpayer is not concerned that they're gonna go and overstaff this from a year or two down the road, very, I believe, very responsible in that respect, so again, if that gives any comfort, everyone is conscious of that, and unfortunately, this building was decided before my chance to get on council, but that being the case, unless we're willing to just, look for $1 million off the ground, we have to make that effort to get it started, give it a chance to show that it can actually produce what it needs to produce before we need to worry about, worse than type.
Well, I guess where I look at that is, there was comments made Monday, and from council members, and I tend to agree with them, that let's say, let's give this thing a year and see how the rates go, what revenue we make, see how the thing's gonna run. Well, that's fine, but we are, on the flip side of this, we are outfitting this arena now for, or the complex, for full capacity. So my thought is, the revenue side, we're willing to let this go for a year and see where it takes us and make decisions whether we're gonna change rates or whatever, but we're staffing it to the full extreme now. So my thought is, should we be walking before we run here on the expense side, so that maybe things mesh? If somebody come along next year, 12 months from now, and say, hey, you know what, revenue's up, use is up, everything else, we need extra people to help run this, to maintain the business we've built up. I don't have a problem with that. But this is, what I look at is a lot of crystal ball game right now, saying, yeah, we hope we're gonna get there. Maybe we will.
I'll just respond on that. I think staff are looking at this. We listen to council, we're listening to you today. We'll continue to listen as we pull together the last budget. But I think the bottom line is that if we don't have any incremental resources for this, then we won't be able to use it. We have to close the doors for certain parts, and so that's where we have to be cognizant. And I don't think that we are staffing it to the full level that we would really think we need to, but we're taking baby steps, and we're going to monitor it. And I think we understand the concerns that people have about that, and we will have regard for that, and we commit to really having a good look and consulting and getting feedback from the community to see what they want in terms of service as well.
Okay. Yep.
I got a question on reserves.
Okay, well, I'll go then. I'll keep going.
Just a quick one.
Oh, yeah.
How's it?
Oh, look. Raw, there you go. There's reserves. That's the next slide. Ah.
Well, looking at the operating
Yeah.
budget and in the revenues, and it shows that we put roughly $1.7 million in reserves.
Yeah, that's the one there. Yeah.
And there's another schedule showing the impact of reserves on 2019 budget.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows the reserves going down by $1.7 million. Does that mean we spent $3.5 million? Is that what that means?
Yeah, I'm just going to go. I know the one you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so the 1.7 went into reserves. I don't have the same numbering you have. Part of it went into operating. So at the end of the day, we have a net transfer of 1.4. And then for capital, we're transferring out 3.8. Yeah.
So the reserves have gone down by, you said 1.4, your numbers?
Nah, 2.3.
2.3 is going down?
Yeah, that's the draw this year. Mm-hmm.
That's stunning.
Yeah. Some of them are, when you look at what some of them are, the equipment one,
No, I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
you can draw it down by 2.3,
yeah.
and next year you put in another 1.7.
Mm-hmm.
How do you ever make that up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thankfully they have balances, right? Like they have balances to begin with, but it's something you always have to be, careful about. And that's where you have to start looking, and not in this budget, but I talk a lot about asset management, which some people like, some people don't, but it's the law, it's reality. That's where you really delve in and say, okay, we have all these things we need to do, how are we going to finance it? And that's where you may come to a point where instead of this pay as you go, I call it, you put money into a reserve, you take it out, you actually issue debt. And a lot of municipalities, they issue debt every year, and they're able to pay it through, reasonably through their taxes, and that's how you finance your capital. So we haven't really done that here except for the rec center, but there's ways of managing it to cover your annual road work.
Last year we flew down at
They went down again last year.
1,000.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, some of them are designed that way too. Like the library one had a big draw last year.
That's what my concern is. I just don't see, unless there's some jump in revenues or you cut your expenses, how you're going to survive. You're going to run out of time.
Mm-hmm.
At the spending level, you're going to run out of money.
Mm-hmm. Well, we won't.
Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah, don't scare everybody.
Something has to give you.
Yeah, you have to remember though, these past few years have been, I think, extraordinarily expenditure-wise. The township has done a lot. We built a new library branch. We used reserves.
Listen to the rural people. You know, really.
Well, it was in Wellandport, so that's pretty rural. The library, every year, 50,000 was going into that library reserve from taxes. They were able to, with the grant, right? Yeah. We built a recreation center. We did a lot of work, I hate to say it, yeah, we did a lot of work in the urban area, streetscaping, improving it. You know, this road, you know, we did a lot of work here on this road, wasn't our road, but the other, like,
There's never enough to do everything.
no, it's where you have to make choices, and that's like this whole asset management thing. It's good because that's where you actually say, okay, what services are we providing? What kind of services do we want? If we want another kind of service, what is it going to cost? It's the way we're supposed to be managing. And government hasn't been doing that. And I'm not blaming, it just hasn't been the way, right? And now I think every level of government is realizing that you have to sort of change the way you manage. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I guess my viewpoint on it, and this is a contradiction, but most of the funds that you have to be drawn down on, they ebb and flow. Like this year, you're looking at a new fire truck and 2 new plow trucks at the public works yard, and a pickup truck. You don't buy a plow truck every year. You know, you don't buy a fire truck every year.
No, you plow another, you paint another road.
No, but I mean, but those, as like she said, as Donna said earlier, the capital expenditures for paving a road and stuff have been coming out of, directly out of taxes or out of that fund from.
We use grants.
Yeah, we haven't been using, we haven't been drawing down on our funds.
Yeah. The only way they are is when we put funds into the capital reserve, and if we use capital reserve to fund, it's basically taxes, right? But you're right, the majority is gas tax and the OSIF grant that we receive. Okay, so this, yeah, no problem.
I just, there's $1,250,000 for a hospital reserve.
Yes. Oh, so years ago, before my time,
West Lincoln?
yeah, so the 3 municipalities, Lincoln, Grimsby, and West Lincoln, were asked to contribute to a fund to build a new hospital. And West Lincoln was able to meet that target of 1.2. So that would be our contribution.
So, how does that get spent? What has to happen for it?
I'm not really sure. Yeah.
Isn't that the same as the, I don't know, the original principal amount was like $14 million that the citizens raised? That's also sitting
I don't
in an
know.
account somewhere.
Perhaps. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it was all happened
At the same time.
same time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we're lucky we've met our target, so at least you don't have to worry about that. So in terms of how we fund capital, this, like, the biggest is reserves, and then we have development charges coming in. Pardon?
You knew I was telling with that chart.
No, I just thought it looked, you know, snazzy or something. No, I didn't know. But you know what? I missed this slide. Oh, here. This is capital by functional area. So you can just see quickly where most of the funding, where most of the capital is going. So most of those are pretty self-explanatory. Transportation, operations, roadside services, it's really anything other than like paved roads. So a lot of that is sidewalk work, I believe, and vehicles, I think. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly, but there's detailed sheets in the report that tell you everything. Okay.
Is the turnabout being built this year, or is that
The sorry?
the turnabout?
Oh, Mike, you can answer that one.
Is that being,
Yeah, it's a Niagara Region project, and they're looking at tendering it soon, April, May, and awarding the contract. And hopefully construction will start in June or July. And yeah, both roundabouts at South Grimsby Road 6 and Town Line Road. Right? Highway 20 and Town Line.
are they going to be using Gateway as a shortcut?
Gateway.
I don't, well,
That's just to stop at your place for a coffee.
yeah,
Oh, is that where you live?
yeah.
We're gonna come
I think
over.
on the stream side, I think. That's my concern, is once they start working there, the traffic's going to take Gateway, stream side, to get into.
Yeah,
town. They're not gonna go-
forgot to add, the construction is going to take 4 years. No. No, it's about,
Well, it's like transmission towers for wind turbines, right?
yeah, exactly, yeah.
I thought they were putting a roundabout at the bottom of Griffin and Station.
No, it'll be a T intersection with a traffic signal.
They're gonna change it.
Yes,
That's,
yes.
That's this year too, isn't it?
And that'll be part of this project as well, yes.
Where's that other roundabout going? At the top of?
At Region Road 20 and Town Line,
Town line in 20.
yeah,
There.
yeah.
Either side of town's gonna have a turn.
Yeah.
You can come back here.
Yeah, a number of years ago, the region did a safety study review of Highway 20, and, one of the recommendations out of that safety study was implementing roundabouts at the east and west end to kind of slow down traffic. And they're finally getting around to implementing it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, good point. I think it's 15, thank you.
Yeah, it's gonna look really different
Yeah.
when they're all,
Actually, Donna?
Yeah.
One more thing to add. On April the 15th, regional staff are actually coming in to do a presentation to our administration committee, just updating us on the Region Road 20 project. So,
if you can come.
Yeah,
Tell them where
feel
you
free to
live
come.
And they'll stop by for lunch.
Tell them where I live and
Is that a public meeting or is that a meeting?
did they provide speed bumps?
It's the Administration and Public Works Committee.
Okay, so this is how the capital is being funded. This is by asset type, so you can see the, what kind of assets we're improving or adding. So the largest expenditure is vehicles, and that includes like fire and the road vehicles. Now, these are all the individual capital projects by department. This is all on our website too, so I don't know if you have a question about any of them, otherwise I'm not gonna spend like a lot of time on any of these. Okay. If there's anything interesting, I'll point it out. What's this one? Those are the vehicles we're buying. These are the paved road, this is paved roads, the work that's planned for this year. Bridges, so there's going to be a bridge replacement, Patterson Road. And there's actually, I think, 3 bridge projects this year. Some of them have been approved in prior years, but the work's going to happen in 2019. So a lot of construction in town, well, in the municipality, it's not in town. This is, a lot of this work here in terms of sidewalks is related to the Highway 20 work. So as they come through town and change the road, the municipality is responsible for sidewalks, wastewater, and water. So you'll see that in other slides.
Question.
Yeah.
Because they're putting up sidewalks on South 52 Road 6 and from South 52 Road 6 over the street.
Yeah, that's the plan.
To Martin School. I noticed there's a contribution from the developer of
Yeah.
$7,000, but the total expenditure is $255.
No, it's 85.
Was it 85?
Yeah.
Oh,
85.
it's 85.
Yes.
There's two sidewalks, so 85 and 85.
Yeah, they're different though. Yeah, one's on Highway 20. One's on Highway 20.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
So there's one. Oh, I
See, one's on South Guernsey Road 6 from Gateway to Highway 20, right? And the other one is Highway 20 from South Guernsey Road 6 to Streamside.
I guess my question is, why is the developer paying less than pay for all the sidewalks?
Okay, that was an agreement in a subdivision agreement that a certain developer would pay for some sidewalk. Typically, when sidewalk is in a,
My question,
yeah.
are developers supposed to pay for all the
so
sidewalks?
typically, when it's, inside the subdivision, the developer's responsible, but these are like, I never say that word right. Arterially, oh, I can't say it. Those kind of things, usually the township's responsible. So this was an agreement that they're paying for some of it. And we do use development charges for, we can use some development charges as well. Water, again, these two big projects are related to Highway 20 work going through town. And these are, because they're upsizing, we're using some development charges to help pay for them, as well as the reserves. And the stormwater drainage plan, that's largely funded through development charges as well. Oops. This is the water. Again, the major project is related to the Highway 20. A little bit in cemetery and rec programming, parks. And again, staff, we are going through these projects again before final budget presentation. So there could be some changes by the time council sees the budget again. Rec facilities. And then library capital. Planning. So, you know, we talked about St. Martin's School. So here you can see there's $40,000 for the St. Martin secondary plan. This is the 10-year capital expenditure in total. Well, it's by service area. Just want to check something. And this, you know, is constantly being worked on and changes as we get more information. So the total is $61.6 million over 10 years.
I noticed the expenditure and the revenue is always balanced. How do you do it?
You read my report. I explain it. I'm glad you read it. So this is the funding of it. And as I note in my report, at the rate we're contributing to some of these reserves, we will not have the money in the capital reserve. So that's why we have to delve into this and really spend more time on how we're going to finance all these projects. And development charges is huge, like the revenue from that.
But why don't you show a surplus or a deficit when you're doing this?
I can, yeah, I could have a line called unfunded,
Yeah, okay.
definitely,
Wow.
yeah,
Gee, we got enough money for the whole,
yeah,
it's be the way.
no. No, it's called like infrastructure deficit, and everybody has it. Yeah, I talk about it, but you're right, I could show it there. Did I? I called it unfunded?
Because we've always seen that where there was, in cases of roads, there was $25 million in needs, and there was only X number of million to fix it, so there was an unfunded deficit of 20 million or whatever it was.
I guess I'm trying to be optimistic here that hopefully we can build the reserve up, but I say it in my report, like the bridge reserve is the same. It's okay. And that's it. Yes.
So,
Do you notice that's a street sign because it's roads?
so there was discussion Monday night, was raised about 200, I think you said it was $230,000 or $50,000. It was put into the bridge reserve that hadn't been spent on, Township. I think that's where it came from.
We had received a road settlement agreement fund.
No, I thought that was different because there was two scenarios that I recalled, and the one was you tendered for the scheduled work you were going to do last year for Township, and the contract came in for less. And it was $200,000, I thought, that it was said the other night that went into the
Yep.
Bridge reserve. Then the second part of that, that I wanted clarification on is there was also funds, for road rehabilitation, whatever you want to call it, from the wind turbine people of several $1 million, of which that was not all spent. And I was looking quick through some stuff this afternoon, and I thought that was a separate line item, and I think it was projected it was almost $1 million left in it at the end of 2018.
Yeah, so, okay, the wind turbine settlement road agreement.
Right, okay.
So what that was is we received money to repair roads. And it was over 2 years. So it was, so when Councillor Trombetta referred to money that was left over, it was left over from that group of work that was related to the settlement fund. Okay, so what they passed a resolution to put those savings into the bridge reserve. So basically, it wasn't the road settlement reserve fund, and you're putting it now into the bridge reserve.
So there's no road settlement reserve fund now?
There's still a balance.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what's that balance amount to then?
We're projecting at the end of 2019, because we're using some of it in 2018, 252,000.
So there's still road work that has to be done this year, in 2019, relating to that money? I thought it was all done last year.
I'm using some of it, council, it's up to council if they want me to use it or not, but I think it's South Chippewa, we only did a portion of it, so it's to finish off the last portion. Mhm. And I can't remember how much we got, I'm sorry, I don't have that number. I think so, it was quite a lot. And then within that, we're also using it to do a bridge. I think it's the Dockstetter Bridge. I think we're using it to do that one. Too? Yeah. So, it's almost all used up, but there's some left. Anything else? Okay, so please fill out the sheet and help yourself to some tidbits. And again, we thank you very much for coming out on a Thursday night and for showing interest. Thank you.
Thank you.